So I'm here in New York City, and New York City is it's bustling. There's also normally a lot going on, but right now all I can really hear is the sound of ambulance stations. And so you may hear ambulance going up and down the street as we're having a conversation, as hospitals are filling up around the city, and as they've built a makeshift hospital in Central Park, which I don't live that far from, and so we're all sort of dealing with with what's happening right now, not just the virus, but the flood of bad decisions that have preceded it, and the flood of bad decisions that have come to follow it. All the ways in which inequality is being manufactured. And, we're going to be having a series of these conversations with people who are out in the world on the front lines, those who are culture and creatives, those who are working to build power, those who are working to fight in the courts, all the sort of places in which we need to have deeper conversations about. I'm going to continue to invite you to join us at theBlackResponse.org. TheBlackResponse.org is actually our platform where we are bringing people together around a set of demands that we can push people to engage on. I know that the only way that we are going to actually get out of this, the only way that we're going to build power out of this, is if we change the rules. And there we go. Hello, Secretary Castro. How are you?
I'm doing great, Rashad.
It's good to be with you. First of all, I want to just start off by asking, how are you and your family and your loved ones, the folks who were part of your campaign? I'd love you to share with folks how you are doing and folks around you.
Thank you for asking. We're doing great. My family and I are here in our hometown of San Antonio, and so far, no one has gotten ill. We're taking all the precautions that, folks have advised families to take, and, keeping people in our thoughts and our prayers who are going through this right now, and trying to spread information as well, so that others can avoid the spread of the virus. Folks on the campaign seem to be doing pretty well. About, 8 days ago, we had a huge Zoom with probably about 22 or 23 people from the campaign. Maya was on it, as you know Maya very well.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Fearless leader, our campaign manager. And folks, it was so gratifying and so meaningful to see all of the great things that people are going on already to do. And I told them at the end of the call that I have no doubt, and this is true for all of the folks that worked on all of the different campaigns, that they're going to go on to do great things. Some of them directly in politics, running for office, or staying behind the scenes. Others with nonprofits, in many different ways. And also, while I'm addressing the campaign, as you know, Rashad, this morning, Senator Sanders made an announcement about suspending his campaign. I'm sure you join me in thanking Senator Sanders for his tremendous leadership and all of the very important issues that he's put on the table. I mean, he has done a tremendous job of moving the ball forward when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to higher education, when it comes to justice, economic justice in this country. And so I would be remiss if I didn't just give a shout out to Senator Sanders for the campaign that he ran, and of course all of the people that have been a part of his campaign and his movement.
Yeah, no, and so first of all, I couldn't agree with you more. When we had him on our Voting While Black podcast, I was so inspired by just the years of service that he's put in, and how he's been calling out the role of corporations, the role of not having healthcare. And in so many ways, we're seeing the impact of a country that has allowed for corporations to continue to make more while doing less, and all of us having to do more and make less. And so, we are watching big businesses who get bailouts, lay off staff. We are watching folks who are poor or of color have a very different experience with the healthcare system when they need it the most. And One of the reasons why we wanted to talk with you today, there's a ton of reasons. You sit at the intersection of so many experiences that sort of relate to what we're talking about. You are a mayor of a large city, and cities are many of the places where we're seeing the spread of these viruses happen. And you were the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and housing is playing such a central role to all the sort of ways in which we are experiencing this crisis, and particularly the fact that we are sort of at the beginning of the month right now, where people are having to figure out how to pay rent or having to pay bills and where to live in the midst of a crisis. And all of these are choices that have been made. And, I started off by telling people about the Black response and the role that we are trying to play through the blackresponse.org, which is our platform. But we also know that we can't do this alone, and we want to make sure that we're continuing to build powerful allyship and coalitions with people of all races and backgrounds. And in particular, one place where Black and Latino communities continue to have sort of real disproportionate challenges to the rest of the country is in our relationship to the prison industrial complex and the role that mass incarceration has played. The United States has 3% of the world's population and 25% of the world's incarcerated population. And that's not an accident. It's not like a car accident. It's a set of choices this country has made by criminalizing mental health, by criminalizing poverty, by over-policing in certain communities, by leveraging so many things to make it easier to get a gun than a quality education, and so much more. But I want to talk about both mass incarceration and mass detention, the role, the immigrant detention centers, and the spread of the coronavirus. And you've been speaking out about this, and we've been speaking out about this, and we need to continue to build power to force local, state, and national officials to decarcerate. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about this problem, to talk a little bit about the work you're doing. And for folks who are listening, for folks who are connected to other folks, what should we be doing right now?
Yeah, and Rashad, thank you and everyone at Color for Change and all of the allies that y'all have forged this coalition with for keeping these issues front and center. You know better than I do. You know better than so many people that if you don't put them out there, these are not the issues that get the attention of politicians. They're not the issues that, companies are sponsoring some sort of conversation about. They're not the issues that a lot of money is put into, oftentimes in state legislatures or even in Congress. And so, just to connect this to what we're facing right now, obviously, look, we're going through an unprecedented situation right now in our country. And so it presents a lot of new challenges, but it also highlights some of the inveterate challenges that this country has. And one of those is that the most vulnerable people always get hit the hardest. When I think about mass incarceration and mass detention, number one, I think of that even before this coronavirus, there is a huge need to change our criminal justice system, to reform it, and to do all of the things that y'all have been fighting for, that others have been fighting for, that we articulated in the campaign, that several of my colleagues who ran, whether it was Cory Booker or Senator Harris or Sanders, Senator Warren, articulated, from reforming policing on the street, which I was very outspoken about in the campaign, because I think we don't talk about it enough, which is in many ways, the beginning of it in the criminal justice system, to dismantling that private prison industry, both in the context of everyday crime and then also in the immigration context. So there's so much that we need to do. But the question immediately in front of us is, what can be done right now? Because everything has changed over the last couple of weeks. So number one, I'm a fan of several local jurisdictions that have made a decision not to incarcerate people for low-level, nonviolent offenses. Some of that has already been done, whether through legalizing marijuana or in local communities making a decision that certain crimes, they're going to treat it more like a speeding ticket. They hold people accountable if that's what's due, but they're not going to incarcerate somebody. But now more jurisdictions have gone to that because what they see is that basically, prisons and these detention facilities are really our powder keg. You have people that are crowded into tight spaces. You have places that inspector generals have said, and others who have gone in there have said are not sanitary. So they're already in a bad condition for the people who are there. You have folks who are vulnerable, a lot of older inmates, right? You have people oftentimes who have underlying conditions that make them more vulnerable to this coronavirus. And so you have all of these elements that say that militate in favor of keeping people out in the first place. And right now, if you have folks who have lower level offenses with short sentences, my hope is that they're going to be released, right? Released, even if that's temporarily. They shouldn't be in that environment right now. They don't present any kind of threat to society. In fact, there's probably a bigger threat if we keep everybody crowded in those unsanitary conditions to all of us and to them than by being smart about it and getting people out. In the immigration context, as you know, there are about 20 or so detainees who have been diagnosed with the coronavirus, and a handful of people who work in these detention centers as well. Yeah. And so, it's already in there and it's already in the prisons. The question is, what are we going to do to make sure that it doesn't spread? And just to connect this back to a conversation about forging partnerships, this is where it matters. To all of the people that are watching that wonder, what does it matter if I support this person that embraces these ideas for criminal justice reform? This is where it matters. Those are the DAs that are taking those steps that we need to take to be proactive. Those are the communities where they're actually making a difference. And so your action does matter.
Absolutely. So, one of the questions that constantly comes up as we talk about decarceration, especially in the age where the virus is spreading through prisons, and, where do people go? You were the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development during the Obama years. And can you talk a little bit about some of the potential solutions that we should be pushing for as people are sort of thinking about the fact that the virus is spreading so quickly? So there might be people who are being released who need to be quarantined before maybe going home to, elderly family members and people that could be immune compromised. What are some of the housing solutions we should be thinking about and pushing as stopgaps to really deal with the fact that prisons are places where social distancing is impossible?
That's right. Look, on any given night before this coronavirus has presented itself, we have thousands and thousands of people who are sleeping on the streets. In many of our big cities, as you know, we have a growing unsheltered homeless population. So again, what this really drives home is that we need to be addressing these issues in full, robustly. During the campaign, one of the things I called for was investing $10 billion to create 3 million more units of affordable housing. I called on, I put forth a plan to end homelessness in our country by 2028. We saw in the Obama administration that, yes, you actually can make a difference and drive down those numbers of homeless individuals if you have a coordinated effort, if you create the opportunity for housing. So we need to be building units. We need to be getting those resources into the hands of nonprofits. I think in Portland, I read about a public-private partnership to put homeless individuals up in a hotel so that they can live in humane, sanitary conditions. I want to compare that really quickly with what happened in Las Vegas. Some folks may have seen a picture of people sleeping in these painted white boxes. They were painted to demarcate how far apart from each other homeless individuals should sleep in this parking lot in Las Vegas. Now, the backstory behind that is that my understanding is they had to close a shelter because somebody had been infected with COVID-19 in that shelter. But the solution was have them sleep in this parking lot, literally in these white marked out boxes. No, you have more than 100,000 hotel rooms in the city of Las Vegas that are not being used right now. This is a time where we can't only get creative where it's comfortable. We can't only go the extra mile to serve people that are doing okay, we have to go the extra mile for the most vulnerable. So creative solutions like partnering up with the private sector right now, investing resources to compensate for housing that homeless people need right now. And then ultimately, of course, taking that and creating permanent housing for people to have with the kind of supportive services that they need so that they can become more stable and they can get on the productive path that they want to be on.
Yeah. I oftentimes think about these issues like what you just talked about seems so common sense, right? This is not progressive. This is not liberal. This is not conservative. This is common sense in the richest country in the world. But yet, I oftentimes think about these issues like what you just talked about seems so common sense, right? This is not progressive. This is not liberal. This is not conservative. This is common sense in the richest country in the world. But yet, there are so many barriers that stand in the way of these type of common sense measures. And the barriers are put in place by profiteers. They're put in place by folks who, in the richest country in the world, are not comfortable simply being rich, but need to be extremely rich with their foot on the neck sometimes of other folks. In this moment where people are sitting back, right, at home, wondering what they can do, I just want to make sure that we are also painting a picture of the things we have to fight back against. What this is going to require, because oftentimes we tell the story of simply changing hearts and minds, simply appealing to people's better angels, and I 100% believe that has to be part of the work. And then there also has to be a part of the work about dismantling the structures that will only be dismantled by us coming together. And so I just love for you, as someone who had the most progressive platform on criminal justice in this last election cycle, you spent a lot of time on policing, reaching out and working with organizations like mine and others and listening to people on the ground. You were a person who didn't just talk about the impacts of mass incarceration on folks that were deeply visible in mainstream media, but you talked about trans women of color who were being killed by police. You spoke those things on the stage, and yet we still have so many folks, we still have so many barriers. So I'd love just for you to give people who are watching and who are wondering why these things continue to happen, the sort of pathway that we've got to do the fight ahead of us to win.
Number one, let me say, and I say this as a former candidate for president and somebody that worked at the local level and then had a chance to see 100 different communities when I was HUD secretary, your voice does matter. Your organization, the organizing that people do out there, it matters. It makes a difference. People at the highest levels pay attention to people who are running for president, people who become president, city council members, mayors, state representatives, governors. It does matter. And my number one piece of advice would be to keep up the fight. That's the beginning. That's the only way that anything is ever going to change. But also, I think it's important, and we've seen a lot of this in the Trump era. I do think it's important to forge those alliances with each other, because one of the things that was most impactful, I think, in this campaign was, when we would go to presidential forums, for instance, we knew that when we got asked a question about criminal justice reform, that we also had to address the issue of immigration. We had to address how that impacts the trans community, the LGBTQ community. And so that is the product of these alliances that have been forged. I think we also have to live our values in how we vote, in how we consume, how we purchase, right? All of us have individual power to make a difference. And I think that as much as we want to get rid of Trump, defeat Donald Trump, and now I'll speak, the political part for me, I think all of us who are running the presidents, really we want more than that. And Corey, I think, was the best at saying this, right? He would say over and over in the campaign that was just a floor, that wasn't a ceiling, and he couldn't have said it better. It is a commitment to social justice, to economic justice, to racial justice. And all of the voices that rise up and are a part of that do matter to bringing that about. On top of that, there are the things that people can do in everyday life. Volunteer, right? Volunteer as part of an organization that is doing good work. Contribute to an organization that is doing good work to further their mission. Make sure that you do what you can to hold your local elected officials accountable. If people don't hear from you about an issue, and I can say this having been a city council member, right? People never hear, even though you think that they get it, if they never hear from you or others about an issue, they feel like they can just do whatever they want on an issue, right? And so you have to be there. You have to hold them accountable.
Absolutely. So, I'm seeing a lot of love for you on this chain. A lot of folks are asking how they can join you in the fight. People are saying how much they miss you on the stage. And that was because of the work you did. I want to first remind people that they can learn more about this work by going to the blackresponse.org. They can also go to a platform called the Humane Outbreak Response. HumaneOutbreakResponse.org is a platform over 70 organizations that have come together to start pushing, organizations that represent a range of different communities. And that, someone's going to put it in the chain below, so you can click on the actual link and follow it. But that is a coalition of many different organizations that are working around the country to help decarcerate, to help free people in this moment, building campaigns that are going to target local decision makers, sheriffs, judges, prosecutors, governors, to start to decarcerate right now. As you just said, our voice matters and people need to hear from us. And in this moment where the media might not be covering this story as much as they should, the implications of not dealing with this human rights crisis right now, it will be tremendous. This virus will track and spread deeply in prisons and be a death sentence for people inside. Whether they're inside of prisons because they've been sentenced for, folks have been sentenced for something, or whether folks are in jail, 70% of whom haven't been sentenced for of anything right now and are oftentimes too poor to pay for their own bail and now are suffering as a result. I'd love for you to say for folks, what's next for you? Speaking truth to power in such an incredible way, with the power to both understand how things work on the inside, but welcome the voices of those on the outside to build power and to push. And so what are you doing now? What's next?
Well, so, this forced break, as it is, the coronavirus actually came at a fortuitous time, for me, because I've been traveling, campaigning for president for about a year, and then really going before then as well. And so right now I have an opportunity to spend a lot more time with my family, which I've really enjoyed. But two things. Number one, of course, I'm going to do what I can to help the presumptive nominee, Joe Biden, get elected and defeat Donald Trump. I think it's a time where all of us Democrats and independents got to come together, and hopefully some Republicans too, who recognize the failings of Trump. I'm going to do what I can to pitch in to make sure that that we replace Donald Trump in November. But more broadly, I'm going to go and use my voice to support the types of candidates and also issues that I espoused during the campaign. We espoused this people-first vision for the future of our country, this country that we want to build where everyone counts. And I spoke up consistently for the most vulnerable people in our country. And I'm going to keep doing that by supporting candidates, by highlighting issues, by making sure that where I think I can be helpful, I am. And, we're going to turn that into an actual effort, an organized effort that we'll make an announcement about shortly.
Well, we'll be looking forward to that announcement. Is there anything final that you want to leave people with as we wrap this up? People are at home right now and they're searching for things to do. They're trying to make sense. People are trying to stay safe. We are asking folks right now to take steps to raise their voices for the most vulnerable by going to the blackresponse.org. But there's all sorts of places where people can go to take action in this moment. And I don't know if there's sort of any final words that you want to leave people with.
Number one, Thank you for having me on. I hope that people will support the Black response and the real challenges that you're highlighting and the work of Color of Change. Y'all have been fantastic over the years. I would request for people to fill out their census form.
Yes.
You can do that right now. Let's not forget the census is out there. Please. I know you got some time.
In less than 7 minutes,
Please.
right? Less than 7 minutes.
It only takes a few minutes. Do something concrete and build on that.
Secretary Castro, my friend, brother, I appreciate you. Stay safe, stay healthy. Sending my love to you and your family and all the people that are sort of part of your larger network and community. And thanks for joining us on our IG Live for the Black Response.